And good Friday evening, everybody. I'm meteorologist Tim Pandajis here with your tropical update, and we're talking about Tropical Storm Julia. Yesterday when we talked, it was PTC 13, and between then and now, it became Tropical Depression 13. Now it's finally a tropical storm, and it got that next name, the 10th name of the season, and that is Julia. So as I mentioned, it started at PTC 13, our fourth PTC of the season. Then it became a Tropical Depression. Winds weren't just strong enough to get that upgrade to a tropical storm late last night, but today it became Tropical Storm Julia, still tracking pretty much due west with modest strengthening expected in the next 12 hours or so. I do expect a jump in intensification just before landfall late tomorrow night, late Saturday night into early Sunday, with a landfall expected along the Nicaraguan coast, and then it rapidly weakens quickly thereafter. Here's a look at the most recent update from the National Hurricane Center, and we're looking at infrared satellite imagery here. And what that does is it tells us the temperatures of the cloud tops. And in this particular situation, it is very helpful that we can see an increase in strong convective activity or stronger thunderstorms. And in this case, in particular, flaring up around the center of Julia. Look at this image here over the last 6 hours. And notice in the last couple of frames, you see a flare up of the shades of white and pink there. Those are very cold cloud tops, meaning they extend up through a great altitude. Colder temperatures up there, stronger thunderstorms, and the fact that they're around that center points to showing that it's probably at a period where it's going to start to intensify a little bit more and gain sustained winds up and over 40 miles per hour, but it is moving at a pretty quick pace. Off to the west at 18. That's a little bit too fast for tropical systems to fully take advantage of the environmental conditions, which in this area are pretty conducive. We've got the warm ocean waters, a moist atmospheric profile, and overall wind shear is favorable, although it's not completely low. We've got some northerly shear still working on the system, which is why at center right there, most of that convection is developing to the south of the center, at least right now. So intensification expected going forward. Now, we've been talking and comparing tracks of other previous storms that have been low riders or low latitude storms so far this season, and there's been a lot of them compared to where we usually see storms developing. It's not usually skirting the northern coast of South America. Places like Aruba, Curacao, and Bonaire don't usually deal with tropical systems, but this year they've had 3 to deal with. So here's the current track of Julia. This yellow track here is Bonnie's track. That was back in June. That failed to develop until it got just ahead of landfall in Nicaragua, where it peaked at a tropical storm. This was also a rare form because it moved into the Pacific Basin. Cross-basin storm, unusual, and there it became a major Category 3 storm. And then, of course, this red line is Ian. The similarities between Bonnie and Julia ended a long time ago as the tracks diverged, and Ian took a northerly track. It really took advantage of the central and western Caribbean warm waters, overall conducive environment. And we know what happened after that. Rapid intensification became a major Category 4 before slamming Cuba and southwest Florida. But here's Julia kind of setting its own path in between those 2 tracks there of Bonnie and Ian, and expected to head due west. Out ahead of its arrival as it moves west, we've got hurricane warnings in the areas in purple there along the Nicaraguan coast, and outlying islands off to the east there, and off to the north, the Honduran coast is under a tropical storm watch heading into the upcoming weekend and beyond. Now, plenty of warm water is ahead of this storm track. We've got sea surface temperatures, mid to upper 80s. Sufficient sea surface temperatures for tropical development are 80 and warmer. So we certainly have that. And also the Caribbean features some of the deepest, warmest waters in all of the Atlantic Basin, but most of that deeper water is off to the north here, which is what Ian took advantage of. Now, certainly there's plenty of ocean heat content here along the track with Julia, and will likely take advantage of that to develop. And what this basically is not just warm water on the skin of the ocean. That's warm water that extends down to a depth. And once Julia gets a little more organized and stronger, upwelling begins to occur. It's mixing up the ocean. And when the skin of the ocean is the only thing that's warm, when you mix it up, you're pulling up cooler waters from a depth and depleting the warm water, the energy source. When you've got warm water extending down through a depth, you're mixing it up. You've got continuously more energy coming up with warmer waters from a depth. All right, here's the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center. Again, strengthening up to a 65-mile-per-hour tropical storm by tomorrow afternoon. Overnight Saturday and a Sunday, peaking at a Category 1 hurricane. 75-mile-per-hour sustained winds. Makes landfall around sunrise Sunday morning and then moves over land and quickly falls apart, becoming a remnant low by Monday afternoon with just winds of 30 miles per hour. This will be, however, an epic rainmaker for Central America, and that's going to bring with it a whole slurry of other problems as the storm rolls on in. On top of the wind and storm surge threat, you've also got a lot of heavy rain to deal with. Here's a look at the spaghetti plots. Pretty straightforward, very good consensus and confidence going due west. And then once we hit land, we start to see a divergence develop here. And watch going out even farther, we start to see two camps developing. One that has a more northwest trajectory with some of these models taking it into the Bay of Campeche, southern Gulf of Mexico. Another camp continuing due west and out into the eastern Pacific, where maybe further development could be likely, like we saw with Bonnie. So we've got a spread here in the models farther out in time. Likely, though, if this secondary track or the secondary camp develops, it likely will be struggling to get it back together again because there's going to be a strong cold front coming on in from the northwest that's going to add shear and keep it likely very disorganized. So here's a look at the steering over the next couple days. We've got a big sprawling ridge of high pressure that's been responsible for that due west track up until now. But once it erodes to the east, we see a weakness develop it with some troughing, that front that'll be dropping on in through North Texas and along the northern Gulf Coast. That'll allow steering to kind of pull it to the north, whatever's left, and add some moisture and increase rain chances, at least for the Gulf Coast, which could use the rain. Here's a look at the GFS ensemble. We've got 30 members here, and it kind of mirrors that split. Two different camps. Some of the model members showing that northwest track, some due west out into the eastern Pacific. So a little more divergence farther out in time. That's not unusual. That's typically what we expect, a lower confidence forecast the farther out in time you go. In terms of a rainmaker, check this out. This is our GFS 7-day rainfall forecast. And it's up to 7 to 10 to maybe up to a foot of rain in areas in Central America, leading to the mudslide risk, flash flooding, on top of the wind and the storm surge threat as well. Wind overall going forward up until the next 24 hours is not all that great. It's really, we see a jump in intensification, likely right ahead of landfall, which is what's indicated by this model here that gives us our peak winds. In the yellow, Category 1 hurricane force winds likely very close to the center of Julia upon making landfall. So that could be winds anywhere from 74 to 95 miles per hour with higher gusts. Again, right up to landfall with that peak of intensification, and then notice the wind field really dissipates as it hits land. It's away from its energy source, the warm waters of the Caribbean, and we see it become a remnant low rather quickly. Here's a look at modeling and how it kind of develops and evolves over the next 24 to 36 hours. By tomorrow morning at 5 a.m., we're starting to see a little more structural integrity with this, and then as it billows off towards the west, you can see it starts to get more organized, stronger wind field closer to that center, and right ahead of landfall Saturday night into Sunday morning, we see the heaviest rain and winds build on in. Just to the north of the storm track there, you're going to have the onshore flow, so the highest storm surge threat will be in those areas north of where Julia does make landfall, likely as a Category 1 hurricane at that point in time. That's the latest on Julia. Until next time, you can find me on social media. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and also on TikTok at Tim Talk Weather. Enjoy the rest of your Friday.